Welcome, Ines. You're the first one on this podcast.
Wow, what an honor.
You've got a little bit of a privilege there. Maybe I'll put them out in different order though. But I think you're going to be the first one. So to give you a little bit of an idea what this is about, is your program you've got is Hypnosis Everywhere, where mine is a little bit more of how that interweaves with everything else a bit different. So it's got things about consciousness and hypnosis and meditation and energy and all the exciting things that I'm interested in and how they weave together. So I'm trying to speak to the best people around the world that have got different ideas and interesting things that interweave with that.
It's actually not that different in the scope.
No.
Not that different.
So that's the approach I've got is the overall scheme of things, not just the hypnotic bend on things.
And mine is about the hypnotic bend, but it also covers everything else because I think everything is hypnosis. Energy, it's all EFT. I don't care what it is. To me, it's the bypass of the critical factor of the mind, and it's all hypnosis. So I'm directing it at most people who don't know much about hypnosis. The hypnotists that listen are just a cream on the top.
Yes. That's why I thought you'd be a fantastic guest for the first of this. I just want to give you an outline of the scope of where that fits for the audience that hopefully will connect with this.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So I'd like you to give us a little bit of information about yourself, of where you got to be who you are today, of what got your interest in the world of.
We could write a book about it. No, I couldn't, but somebody else could. Because I think everybody's lives are totally fascinating, right? Everybody's life. So I was born in Belgium, and I became a Canadian citizen when I was 12 because I moved to Canada when I was 6. So I consider myself mostly a Canadian. But in that subconscious levels, I'm pretty Flemish, I think. But essentially, I came to Canada, and when I was 10, I hypnotized my first person. Because my brother, who was 5 years older than me, had got a book on fascination.
Oh.
So he, I laid on the couch. We had the pen, the shiny gold pen there, and he made eye roll and did the whole thing about putting me in hypnosis. And then he glued me to the wall and stuff, the usual, so phenomena stuff. So I thought that was pretty fun. And so I knew how he'd done it, so I did it to my next door neighbors, and I went around to all the kids that I knew, and parents would say, "Gee, you guys play so quietly and nicely in there. That's lovely." But I was very lucky. Universe, God, whatever you want to call it, looked after me to make sure that I was working only with kids. I was doing no harm.
Yes.
So then I grew up, and I became interested. I started doing transcendental meditation when I was 16. And I wrote in the paper about it and did all this stuff. I always knew certain spiritual aspects of life. I was brought up Catholic, but my conscious mind said, that's not me. So that's not for me. And then for there I went and got married at 18, and everything changed. Because suddenly I had, looking back on it though, I know there was a method to the madness of it, because I brought a Chinese guy from Hong Kong that I'd met in Vancouver. They were actually stranded where we were, and for 3 months. And at 18, we had this great passion of, what it's like when you're 18. It's very big.
Yes.
So I was learning how to speak Cantonese for a while and all that. So I've always had sort of slight adventures, but didn't work out so good. It was very difficult for him in the culture because I'm sort of a free spirit. I wasn't walking 3 feet behind or whatever his culture was. He said intellectually he could do that and it would be fine, but he had a tough time with it. So that didn't last very long. We stayed friends, and he moved on and married someone that was closer to his culture. And from there, then I married a guy that I was married to for 30 years, and I had kids and everything. So my life was in all that kind of facet. I hadn't even thought of hypnosis for a long time.
Yep.
And then one day in my midlife, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something I'm passionate about instead of just working for money. So I was searching, and I became a hairdresser, which I know was kind of, but it was fun learning it. Not so much fun doing it because it gets to be a slog, and I'm not visual.
Yes.
So it's very tense because I don't see it, and I'm technically good, but I wasn't very creatively good. So I moved from that, and then my mom went and took a course in some kind of psychic phenomena, I thought she was, and then she found out it was a hypnosis course, and it was just like the light bulb went on. It was just like really big light went on, it was huge. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what I was here for, and I could tell that. So I went and trained and got an entry-level course because I couldn't do much except do some direct suggestion. We'd been told about other things, but we had never really been taught it. So I had knowledge of what was available, but I didn't know how to do it necessarily. So I was lucky enough, I got very lucky, and I took training with Jerry Kine in Florida, who was Omni Hypnosis, which is now sort of spread worldwide, and he passed about 2 years ago now, or a year and a half. I don't know, it's a while, it goes fast. So from him, I learned the bulk of what I do. He is a phenomenal guy, and he always said, practice what, you need to move hypnosis forward. So experiment at least 10% of the time.
Well, that's a fantastic tool to be given early on.
So right away, I started experimenting pretty much all the time. But maybe a little more than 10%. But essentially, I found what Omni training was regression to cause.
Yes.
So regression to cause worked very well. There was other stuff taught in the Omni course, but it was sort of like I was fixated on regression to cause, and that's what I did just about everything. Then I started to run into some people who really didn't want to tell me their stories.
Yes.
They didn't want to, especially men, if they'd been raped or done anything, they didn't want to give me all that, because in the regression to cause, you need to know what's going on, and you need to know who the players in that is, and and how to give you the perception and give you the tools to change the perception of that, do the forgiveness work and all the other stuff. So that's what I did, and then I thought, well, how am I going to do that without this? So I started to figure out how to do these things without them having to tell me anything in words. They didn't have to share a thing. And this started about 2005, so I'd been in the business for about 5 years. But it had been slowly evolving, and there I started, and of course I called it working in the Esdale state and beyond, because I had decided that because I was so supposedly analytical, which we know from where you are and where I am, that is just that you have no trust, and you want to know everything so you can feel safe.
The learning part's always looking out, protecting and listening.
Yes. So, but from there, I started to work little things all the time, more and more, and it slowly evolved into what SP is today. And now it's called Simpson Protocol, because of working in Esdale and beyond, I thought the deeper I was, the more bypass I had, and which turned out to be quite true. But at that time, nobody could speak interactively with someone in Esdale, because in Esdale, it's not that you can't move. It's that you feel so great, you don't want to move, you don't want to talk, you just want people to go away. Just leave me alone here, And for me, it was always, Jerry used to call it euphoric, but it wasn't euphoric to me. I think it's hard to put the right terms and right words to what something you feel, and everybody feels it slightly different. For me, it was, I just couldn't be bothered with anything else. And that's a huge thing. I don't know if it's euphoric, but it's sort of like that. So from there, I decided, well, I need to know more, and I started to look around, and Jerry knew about the Secord state, or that Walter Secord had come upon, and how they were using it, but it was called ultra depth, and they had actually copyrighted that term and everything, so we can't use it. But to me, you can copyright the way you're doing it, you can do all that, but a state of mind is a state of mind. So we now work a lot with that level of Secord too. So it's very deep hypnosis, and it doesn't matter I always tell people your conscious will always be present. And if there's anything that you're going to be very interested in or very, maybe just to stay safe, you'll pay attention to it. It's not like in Esdale, you can hear everything. It's just that you're not motivated to listen to it. You just want them to go away. But if you're motivated, it's still going to be present. And so you're always going to be safe. Because your higher mind is actually working in the SP. So I started to teach that and how to do that and get into these deep states and work with idiomotor responses and interactively in Esdale, because we kept one arm out. When we're in hypnosis, we teach people, I don't know if you do, but in past I have, is that if they had pain, we could actually keep parts of the body in hypnosis even after emerging. And it wouldn't last maybe forever, but I teach them how to reinstall it, the comfort levels, so they could just do that. So I thought, well, why can't that work the other way around? So I left my right arm in somnambulism, which to me, what they considered a deep state before the usage of Esdale and Secourt. So if we could put idiomotor responses for yes and no, or I didn't ever use, in my philosophy in SP is not to use maybe, or I don't want to talk about it, because I'm not working with the conscious mind. And I'm working with what we call the superconscious mind, which is just the part of us that's attached to source, or can be in any morphic field, can know anything. So all aspects, we can all do that if we are in a deep enough state for us to allow our conscious mind to at least sit on the sidelines. Doesn't mean it's not present.
Yes.
Okay. And from there on, people started to call it, that Simpson Protocol. We're going to do that Simpson Protocol. So pretty soon I started calling it the Simpson Protocol, and that's what it stayed like to be now. But it's moved on a lot since I started, and it's constantly evolving now. So the main parts of it is that it's very holistic. From my point of view, I was looking for something that would do all facets, body, mind, and spirit. And because people say, well, I'm not very spiritual, why do I have to ask those questions? I said, well, everyone, just because you don't know about it, you don't see electricity, you don't see things, it's still there. So just assume that it's there, even if you don't believe in it, just be open to the possibility. And I say the same thing to clients. You don't have to tell me you believe you're very spiritual, you're this or you're that. It doesn't matter. That higher part of you always knows the right answer.
Well, from my experience with using SP, quite often the results are different anyway. The person who is as spiritual as a bag of bricks and doesn't have a spiritual bone in their body, the way they talk, the superconscious is answering yes to all those outside questions of the spiritual realm and
it's
things
very
like
interesting. So when a client is open to possibility, then they're not freaked out by that, right? If they're really freaked out, they wouldn't come and be my client in the first place, would they? So I know I've had some people that I've trained in the past that their belief system was considered to be atheistic. They didn't believe in God. So it was very strange that when they learned the process, they said, well, I really don't want to ask those spiritual questions. I said, well, then you won't be doing SP. Because it's part of everything. It's about the whole, doing the whole. And when you're working on clients, you always meet them. It's not about your judgment and telling them what to do. And working the way it's about meeting them. Right?
Yes.
So anyway, the atheistic guy, his yes finger went up at, like you just said, at every spiritual thing, and really sort of brought his mind to oh my God, is there really something else? And if there is or not, or maybe your mind is the usual. When people used to say to me, well, when they had a spontaneous past life regression or something, they'd say, well, is that real? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I've had it happen many times, so I'd have a tendency to believe that it's real. But I can't say that. Your mind could be giving you metaphors and stories to help you change whatever it is. So I'm not there to change their belief systems. They can just choose and decide on that themselves.
Be open to the opportunities.
Yes. So
the interesting thing I had the first time I went back and practiced an SP session was the lady who'd come in. She, before we started, she was asking me, because I know all the weird and wacky people of the Newcastle area. She's like, who's the best psychic who I can see? Because I want to contact a psychic medium to do this thing that she wanted to deal with that was outside of what we were going to work on. And then I said, let's just handle this session anyway. So we did the session afterwards. She's like, I don't need the number of anybody now. I got the answer of what I was after for something outside of this for later.
Yeah.
Just from having that connection. She felt she'd had that response.
Many people get epiphanies and knowings, right?
So that was a big eye-opener for her of the difference that SP can make of that outside thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, they can trust it because it was their mind told them. We didn't tell them.
Yes.
You know? And some of the most incredible epiphanies that happen for them is pretty exciting.
Now, you were talking before about how it developed from that regression to cause.
Yeah.
That's the bit I'd like to focus on a little bit here, because I think I've been a little bit jaded towards regression to cause because it can re-traumatize people and everything like that. And that's the bit I love about SP, is you get the little bit of regression you do, they just get the feeling and then you cut it off. And you don't make them delve into that. The whole process is just dealing with super consciousness of solving that issue without them having to go there, be there, do it, talk about it, think about it, anything.
It's totally interesting because that is how it developed. I didn't mind doing regression to cause because I knew that underneath that stuff is all running still. It's like in your computer when you put your thing down on the bottom there, that little icon it's still there, and it's still running in the computer, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that. Sometimes I'd say to people, when we do this, you only have to feel it and know it for just a couple seconds. It doesn't take long. I never kept people very long, and it wasn't built up into it wasn't about me learning all these stories. It was about just getting who the players were, and then from how to do. I knew how to do the therapies to get them there. So I still use those therapies today in a sort, but it's all part of SP. So in the regression, and I think ultimately Jerry was I still think, Jerry, if you're present, that he was one of the best hypnotists in the world. I'm not saying fully the one, because there might be someone else that was as good. But to me, he had such great charisma, and he had such great wanting to help people. He was always there, and people trusted him implicitly. So I learned a lot from him just on how to be present and all that. So I really give him really good credit. And he also had things like he had developed a place called Ultra Height after the Secord state was done, because he said, well, if they're going to call that, I'm going to figure out some way to get the same sort of effects from that. And it was just in a higher mind. So it wasn't like I wasn't using Omni to lead into SP. The only difference is that I don't take them to what he had perceived as ultra height. Because what I ask is very simple. I say to the mind, I say, please take them to a higher level where the appropriate guidance is. Now, I don't mean that's to be angels or anything, not that it couldn't be, but it could be anything the mind decides is important for supporting you. So it isn't about I take you to this special place and you decide, because ultra height it works really well too.
Yes.
But it's just a separate unit. What SP is sort of everything tied together, and it's a really holistic practice. So I started with when the question is experiences. Now, in general, most of the time in when we're doing regression to cause work, we need to find the ISE, which means the initial sensitizing event. And we want to get the first one, the first thing that started that. So many times we would get that, and then we'd do the therapy around it. So in SP, I only asked superconscious mind, because it knows everything, just is there any they need to know about, period? And they say yes. Now, once in a while, if I get a sense, I'll say, superconscious mind, do they need to have the ISE for their knowing? So some people do, and then it says yes or no, and then we do it. But otherwise, at the beginning, when I was working by myself, now we're getting into the morphic field aspects of this and everything, I was all by myself in my field doing that. And it would take me, the first sessions would take a couple hours. So as that morphic field grew, and now it's quite large, it's taking less and less time, and it's evolving quicker and quicker. As now I have trainers, everything is evolving at a rapid pace.
That's fantastic. Now, just for the listeners at home that might have come to this just from the hypnosis side of things, as I said, we're weaving that energetic and hypnotic mix in. Could you explain what a morphic field is?
I think you better ask Rupert Sheldrake. All I know is that there's fields, we all have them, and the more that we add to that, or people's belief system are centered or focused on that and everything, you actually get more. You know the old story about when they did the rats, and after these rats learned all this and learned this, and once you had the breaking point, or what they call 100 monkey effect or whatever, then after that all the rats changed. Well, it's a certain similar idea to that. The fields are, I'm not the most articulate person to do that, but everything is present, everything has that energy.
That group consciousness.
Yeah, that group consciousness. So if you're by yourself, you're by yourself, but as things start to go, every practice has a morphic field.
Yes. Right?
The swan will have a morphic field, all of them. So, but I find now, as I have quite a few, well, I don't know how many practitioners there are, but there's lots now, and really, it just moves it forward. So now, it's not just about the morphic field, it's also about keeping total judgment out of it. You know, as you know, with SP we ask questions, and we always watch the language, so that it is never a leading thing, because it can be as simple as a lead as when you say, well, if you know, you're looking at something and you say, how big is it? Instead of saying, is there a size to it or something? Yes. Right? There's a big difference in what the perception of that is. Big is a big word to give that, you know.
Like the old alien abduction hypnosis that used to be around of, well, what did the spaceship look like?
Yeah.
What were the aliens? Were they green aliens? Were they grey aliens? The leading questions.
Total leading.
Place the idea in their mind from a pick.
Yeah, and you have to be very careful with that. I don't like leading in any way. So sometimes we do in hypnosis lead now, sometimes, not so much in SP, but in other facets, we'll lead a little bit to get them going in the right direction. And so those are sort of intentional small leads. There's not quite there, but if you're leading just constantly, it's not, I don't think it's too accurate.
You're not going to get anything,
No. So that's the whole part. It takes the judgment of the practitioner out of it, and especially if you do, we all make judgments. We can't help ourselves. We're human, but as long as you leave the judgment in the back of your mind and you don't let it spill out of your mouth. So, for example, let's say we're taking a SUDS, which would be the subjective unit of distress, right, of someone, and their numbers are high or extremely low. Then you're going, well, I don't know if that's really right or whatever. You know, you're sort of always doing that. But the thing with SP is you never second guess what you get. You might confirm it with another question, but you never ever say, oh, is that right? Really? It isn't like this? You know, I mean, it's not something that's working. So when the judgment is out of it, the client seems to really just let it happen very easily. And we're a little bit, it's not really tricky. It's just that we talk to the client. It is similar to the swan in that way, is that we don't talk to the conscious part of the client.
Yes.
So they don't have any pressure on them to achieve.
Yep.
Right?
No.
So it's great. So between that and totally being led by the higher mind, and like you say, the people get understandings and they get all kinds of things that happen. But at the end, when you've taken a SUDS, which is, you know, whatever issue you're working on, and the SUDS is not present any longer after, and you can actually prove to the client that everything's been resolved in a few other ways, and it's very easy. And yet I was totally content free because I haven't got a clue what what was happening, unless the person decides to share. That's different. Sometimes they decide to share, and sometimes they'll tell you at the end of the session. And I don't know, most hypnotists know, many times at the end of the session they'll give you the pure gold.
Yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. So many
so
times.
Much easier to work with.
Yeah, and then you think, why didn't you tell me that when we were talking in the intake? You know, but with SP, because I teach them right away to go back into these states on their own, it's very easy. I just ask them to go back and we address it. So it has many benefits, and the big benefit is they have this gift of going to these deep states on their own.
That's fantastic. Now, with some of these states that you've mentioned, some people might not understand some of the terms.
No.
So, and I understand with everybody, their views of some of these terms are a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I'll get you to explain quickly what
the
you
levels,
think some of these levels are that you work with SP, if they read about it online and want to get some more info.
Well, I'm sure they're different for everyone. So I ask them to go to, when they get to somnambulism, that's what we go to. We want to confirm for them that they're really there in hypnosis, because when they do this self-hypnosis, they'll start second guessing if they're really doing it right and all that.
Yes.
So, and then we go to Esdale, which is different, is you're totally there, but you really can't be bothered. Just for example, I had a student was testing for Esdale, which is just a term. The only reason we test for Esdale really is only time we would need to is that we were using it for surgery or something, because it's a gift of anesthesia, right? And total can stop bleeding, can do all that. It's a whole other subject with, what was caused with we've talked about that. James Esdale was actually the first person to get people in that state with a mesmeric sort of work.
It's mesmerism, not hypnosis, but yeah,
but
it still works.
In my world, that's all the same.
It is.
So in my world, it's all hypnosis, because they're all bypassing that critical factor, the conscious. So so then after that, you get to that part. Anyway, the student was testing me on the wrong arm. Right? And inside I'm thinking, well, do you think I should come up? Tell him? Nah. He'll figure it out. That explains what Esdale's like for me.
Yep.
It's totally like, I can't
just chill about it.
Yeah, chill. So, and eventually he did. Somebody in the class said, that's her somnambulistic arm. How you can't get that. So we went on from that. So from there, what I started to do, as I learned from James Ramey, that stuff about ultra high depth, right? And I found that he was the most artistic, creative kind of hypnotist. But I found that SP could attain those things much easier and faster, because it wasn't the person having to try to go there. The person's always led by the superconscious to do that. And then people will say, well, what's the superconscious? And I'll say, it's the part of you that knows everything. I haven't got a clue. It's just it's a construct for the mind to give you the right thing. So we go those. And we also go to high, where whatever the guidance is, which may be guides if the person's that way inclined, or sometimes it's somebody's cat or dog or even their aunt or something. And some people just, they don't necessarily see it. They sometimes just feel that, and they just feel the support from it. So, and then we go to what we call the physical healing level. And I take them there, and I ask it to start if there's something to heal, or even if there isn't, usually we have some little thing in our body that could stand some healing, I'm sure, just to show them what that's like. So I start the healing, and I ask, let me know when the conscious mind knows that it's in process, meaning that they have some sense, knowing, or feeling about that it's working. So they do that. So everything in SP is always about confirmation for the conscious too. So, and then we have emotional healing, mental healing, spiritual healing, and the soul level. And they're all very adapted to exactly what those words mean. And there's many other places to heal, but you can just ask, is there another level of healing that needs to be addressed? And it just happens. They either say yes or no. No, all these are fine. So the levels are pretty self-explanatory. Doesn't mean they're all the same, because each person will have a different sort of outcome from it.
Yeah, and some you just skip over completely with people.
Some,
if
well,
superconscious says no.
No, they don't need it. It's very no, it's not that. But in the first session, what I'll do is even if they don't need healing, because usually the healing is addressed to the issue we're working on. I mean, there's a lot of healing to be done in the world, but let's keep it to what we're working on for the client. And so, if it doesn't need a couple of those, I'll say, if it's their first session, I'll say, is it okay if they know what it would be like? Okay. And I still get them to sense, know, or feel it for future use, because if they decided to use it, they wouldn't have the confirmation that I like to give the conscious mind.
Speaking of that confirmation, with the physical healing, I've heard you talk about where you've worked with that yourself on with self-hypnosis to heal a wound.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, actually, that was pre SP, but it was just using somnambulism at the time, because I had cut my finger and it needed stitches, and I cleaned it out under the tap, and I put myself in somnambulism, and I had given directions before I went in saying, please, it's clean now, please do all the healing that needs to be done to bring it back together. And the only thing I hadn't told it what I wanted, you also have to tell what you want, is that please make it go back to the right form, because I had a little lump on that finger, but the skin closed up within an hour.
So it's pretty powerful.
It's really powerful. People, when they know how to use hypnosis, it's hugely powerful. And we program ourselves constantly by saying, well, the doctors say it'll take 3 weeks to heal. But it's not them healing the body. They may be there, and they may be a necessary practitioner for you to have, but it doesn't mean that you have to buy into that. You can do self-hypnosis and ask it to heal in the appropriate way and the best for you, and the quickest it can do it. And it usually goes much faster, whatever the time frame is, that's supposedly. Because even if you have stitches in your finger, it doesn't close up in an hour.
No, it does not.
No. So it's such a gift having these tools for yourself. And we give that gift to each client that comes. Now, if they choose to use it, that's their choice.
Will you even give that gift of self-hypnosis to people who are not clients?
Well, that's true. I do have a free self-hypnosis site that they can go to. I figure the more people I can get using, that 100 monkey effect has got to come in somewhere. When people start to make themselves better all the time, things have to change. The only way I can see in changing the world is starting here and moving it forward to other people, because ranting about it, or even what was it Mother Teresa said once, they came to her and they said, please, can you come and join us in our anti-war rally? And she said, well, no, I can't do that, but if you ask me to go to a peace rally, I'll show up. You see, there's a subtle difference in that. One is fighting.
Yes.
One is just being there. I don't know. I thought that was pretty. And I've tried to keep SP on those levels of no judgment for that reason, and all those sort of things.
That's fantastic. Now with SP, it seems to work quite fast. I watched you do a session on a client of mine last night, and she had quite a fast shift of a couple of things, and she had that regression. There was quite big emotion, and then it was gone very quickly. You could tell she didn't have to delve into it.
No.
She didn't even remember that part afterwards.
No.
But she felt clear differences, and she talked about issues that just vanished afterwards. And sent both of us messages afterwards saying how great she felt that night when she got home.
Well, and that's part of why I like the regression the way the SP is, because I really only need to know one thing. I only need to know what they're feeling if it's negative. And every now and then, even the superconscious will give you a positive feeling. And the first time that happened to me, I thought, what's that about? And then so I just started to ask some questions, and it said, well, there's a reason that you gave this to her for this now? It said yes, of course, but just confirming. And then I said, well, is it because you want this feeling even amplified? And it said yes. So it's not always a negative feeling, but most of the time. So when the negative feeling is there, I just need them to notice what it is. And if they're, let's say I see them, and I think in this case it was very emotional for her, and I just said, I don't need to know, I just need to know, let me know if it's a negative feeling, because I do sometimes get positive. And she said yes, and from there it moves very quickly. And I only need to know that. I like to know the age of the experiencer, because it's easier for me to say, how's 24-year-old you feeling?
Yeah. Oh, well, when you got to the 4-year-old part of her, you got her to give her a hug.
Yes.
Because the little kid needs support.
I actually do that with all facets of their, but once I've asked them to do it, I figure once they've done it once or twice, they know what they're doing. I don't have to keep repeating the instructions.
Yes.
So it says, just do what you're supposed to do, and I'll get the rest done by your superconscious, you know. So they call me the lazy hypnotist for a reason, but really, it's just what Ted, my friend, used to say, that used to teach this with me, and he was one of the best EFT practitioners I'd ever met. He used to say, can you change that to efficient? I really don't like that when you call yourself lazy.
You know, the shortcuts.
Yeah. Well, it's also a Canadian trait, right? We're sort of self-deprecating.
Yes.
You know, it's a Canadian trait. So, and he was American, so he didn't like that very much, and he said, you've got to change that to efficient.
And so speaking of that efficiency, how many sessions do people normally have for an issue with SP?
I hate to say this, but sometimes it can totally be done because in one session for people, but there's a caveat. I always ask superconscious mind, is there other things to clean up around that? So now I suggest to people that come for 3 sessions at least, and then you can always choose to keep working, because you know what, we're an evolving product. And there's always more, but it depends on the clients and their choice if they have a need or a desire for that. But so I usually suggest 3 sessions, and usually by the first you'll have lots to you can. It's always an evolving thing, but I don't even tell them that. I'll say after they're in there, I'll say, superconscious mind, have we dealt with all the issues that we need to address to get to what her desired outcome is? So it'll say yes or no, and then she books the other session with knowing that it's her own mindset that she needs the work. So for me, that's kind of really ethical on my part, and it makes it easy for them. But and if they didn't need the 3rd session, I'd, compensate them back or something. But usually the 3 sessions are well used by superconscious.
Yes. So you've noticed quite drastic changes with quite limited sessions off a lot of clients.
Oh,
that's
yes.
What the students around the world have noticed as well.
We've had a few, and it has nothing to do with the practitioner, of course, because we have, as you're saying, and you know this, Bob in the Swan says the thing, we have no power. The power is all yours. So I've had a few physical changes right in the chair. And one of my students, the first trained in Germany, he was a naturopath, and he did a hypnosis with it. And he had a woman coming in for cervical cancer. And in that first session, the tumor came loose and came out, so he took her to the hospital. And he worked in hospitals and stuff, so it wasn't, you'll never give the practitioner anything they can't handle.
Yes.
It doesn't happen.
I think I'd crap my pants if that happened.
It wouldn't happen to you though.
Yes.
See, it would do it some other way, right? That's right. It wouldn't. But when she was, so the tumor had totally disconnected and gone. And I've seen the ones that changed in my chair was a lady who had a huge ankles from arthritis. And this was before I was doing it this easy way in SP, and I was just still doing it in somnambulism, so that took longer. And it was a little bit painful for her. So you could see it started to move back, roll, and moved. You could see the muscles moving in there. It went blue and black like bruising, and it all shrunk right down.
Wow. And
that took about 20 minutes of not very pleasant time. Now an SP usually goes faster. because we're working in those higher mind levels. So, but it's never come back up. I know this woman still today, and this was, 15, 16 years ago.
That's fantastic.
It is. And so those can happen, but it's not something that you say happens because you have no clue. Because the only thing I ask my clients is to be open to possibility. If you're open to possibility, things can happen.
Yeah. And even though things you can get such rapid change so easily, it's still beneficial sometimes to continue working on things.
You still got to,
we're humans.
Well, everything has got a bit of everything. People say, well, can you address pain with SP? Of course we can. 75% of pain is emotional and other stuff. The real physical pain is only about 25%. But it continues to grow in your being because you start to stress and you start to get tighter and all those things just create it. So if we even only removed all the emotional elements and they only had the physical pain, they'd only have 25% left. Yeah. So, but we want to address all the issues that cause the other parts.
Yes.
So, if I'm working with pain, I do that, and then lots of times at the end of the session, the pain is totally gone, or there's a little bit left, because there's sometimes, it's like what Stephen Blake says in Old Pain to Go, it's about a signal and it needs to be there. And if you would hurt yourself more because it was gone totally, it'll give you a reminder.
Yes.
So those sort of things, and I don't make that judgment in SP because I don't have to. Because the superconscious mind and their higher mind, whatever you want to call any of this, it's a construct. The construct is different for everybody, but it's the same, very similar.
Yeah, well, I noticed...
it's an agreed upon.
Yourself and Martin had a conversation, your partner Martin,
had
a conversation that had been a week since you'd given each other a session, so you felt you'd benefit from it and you needed it. The next day you were fresher and brighter and more refreshed from having that session with each other.
Yes. And then I sort of get a reminder when I haven't worked on myself for a while. And that little part that's built in comes forward and says it's right in my face, pretty much.
And so you're big on your self-tools of what you can do with your self-hypnosis.
Self-hypnosis.
I notice your muscle test and use a pendulum to see what's right for your body, of what you eat and what
I muscle test constantly for what I'm eating, because I did have my own health issue that was very big at the time. It was actually after I did a bunch of training, I think in Europe, and it was a few years ago, and I had really pushed, because sometimes I have this thing about, I'm here and I have to do this for other people, and I'm much moderated than I used to be. I used to push, the usual fibromyalgia type client.
Yes.
So when I came home, they found out that I went to my doctor, like a sense, and see if I needed an intervention, because I had some bad things happen to me, and I got a diagnosis of diabetes. So the diagnosis, I had to be very careful, because I'm just the same as other human beings when you're sick and you're at the doctor's, is not to accept that as a label for myself, because most people I talk to say, it's my diabetes, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to own it.
Yes.
So I started working with hypnosis on it, and within a year, it took that long. I mean, it kept going down, but I had to use the intervention for about a year.
And what was the level then when you could be tested?
Oh, it was 16, which is different in different countries, but in Canadian and terms, it's your ideal is between 5 and 7.
Okay.
So 16 was causing major difficulty in my body.
And if somebody's got that diagnosis that they own of their diabetes, and they work with it hard, where do they normally sit as a good idea?
They say that, they'd like you to get to between 5 and 7. But I think if you're really high, they're quite happy. The lower you get, 9, 10, they're quite, if they can only get it that far. And with the insulin they were giving me, which was huge dosage, I was using 100 units a day, and it was taking me down to maybe 10.
Okay, and now you're sitting roughly
anywhere from 6.8 to sometimes 8 something. And once in a blue moon, when we did that cheating thing there, when I ate all those potatoes, it went up to 10.
Yeah. So
but that's
your worst
insulin
case scenario
free
now is managed at a
Yes.
reasonable level.
Yes.
And you're not using insulin.
No insulin at all.
Checking with
In
yourself.
fact, within a year, my superconscious mind gave me the epiphany that I needed to go on keto. And I did that. And within 2 days, I was down to 10. I was still higher, would fluctuate. 10 was my low, right? But 10 was my high.
Yeah.
And within 2 days, it went down. And so I no longer use any insulin. But I do I still eat keto. So I always check with my mind if this is good for my body today. And even sometimes when it would be legal, low carb or whatever, it would say no. It's been very nice to me since I've been here.
Yes.
It's been allowing me to do certain things. But when I think part of it is to prove to you that day that we had all those mashed potatoes.
Well, it still only took you to a
10.
reasonable level.
Yes, but it wanted to show me that what would happen.
Yes.
If you decided to go back to all that at this time.
Yeah.
But it says it will continue to allow the carb up as a little bit as the body gets more healthy. Yeah. People think that this is crazy, right? You're talking to yourself. I am talking to myself. I'm talking to myself constantly, the higher mind of myself.
But that internal dialogue of having those different toolkits to do it helps your life be a lot easier now. You're not taking drugs all the time and dealing with bringing needles through customs. And
I know that was not fun. And you remember last time I was here, I was physically still pretty, pulling myself up the stairs. There was times that I couldn't even walk properly.
Yeah.
Balance is coming back, all that. It still needs a lot, but I've never been a really, buff person or excited. I've always had a little bit of limitation in my mind anyway. I've been told I think my heart valve that's backwards or something. I can't remember, but it's definitely impacted my childhood. I was never the kid that was running around the track the whole way. I'd only make it halfway around. And but I think that even is improving. Not that I run around the track, but I think my stamina is improved.
Yeah, it is. We went on a couple of different walks while you've been here this time, and you've improved a lot from what you've been doing with the work. So I can see the results. Yeah. In your self-work without.
I don't want to limit myself by saying, well, I couldn't do it when I was 10. How come, how would I expect to do that? But I want to be open to the possibility that can actually repair and get much better.
Excellent. Now, something way back to what you said earlier at the beginning of this, you'd said you'd learnt transcendental meditation. Do you still use any of the meditative techniques from back then?
No, and it's actually, every now and then, actually, I do. I use the mantra once in a while, just when but it was awesome because when I was 16, when I started, I was such a scattered person. I could get up 2 hours before my school bus came and I'd not be ready. It's just, over there.
It's because you didn't have a Martin.
Yeah, I didn't have a Martin then. Very unfocused. And then I'd do the meditation for 20 minutes, and I'd have breakfast eaten, my books ready, gone to the bus, everything in just no time at all. And it shows you think, well, I'm wasting time. Some people think, well, I can't spend that time on myself. Yeah. It's actually going to give you more time because it allows you to focus and become much more internally comfortable.
And so you find you've ticked the box of what that gave you before now with self-hypnosis.
Yeah, because to me, again, everything is hypnosis. Meditation, the only thing from what if I can put it into words, the difference between meditation and what I'm doing with hypnosis is I'm focusing hypnosis on a specific issue that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
And with meditation, it's more about getting to being or, to that stillness.
Yeah, but your hypnosis technique is about connecting with higher guidance, which is where the meditation comes in. That's right.
It's sort of everything is, and there's energy involved and there's energy work involved in different ways. Just, it's all sort of a really, I keep adding things. I've just got this whole thing, it comes into my mind. I just don't need to know a lot about anything. But if I know something and I'll ask certain questions, people will think, well, she knows a lot of stuff. She talks about this and talks about that. I know nothing. I just know a little bit about a subject. And so lately I had one of my students who was great in homeopathic medicine. Wow, it was just knew everything. It was so incredible. And then the changes he saw. And then he said to me, gee, yeah, you know, now that I do SP, I don't really need to know all that stuff, but it's fun knowing the stuff. But I just ask. And I said, well, I'm going to start asking that question. And it's really developed into being another help.
Fantastic. And so, as you've noticed the changes of SP over the years of you doing it, and now you've got quite a few extra people around the world practicing it and teaching it in different languages and countries.
Yeah.
Have you noticed it's starting to change even more now with that?
Yeah, it's everything. And you know what is really interesting now is even though it has a lot of spiritual aspects to it and the questions and things, and of course the deeming the thoughts of having that part of your mind, your higher mind already is considered spiritual by most people, right? And it's actually coming that some of our clients, many, and all the trainers, not just me, is that we actually get someone channeling through them saying, well, this is the next place. This is the next area you need to address. This is next where you're going. So it's being actually led on how we're going. So I don't think I developed this. Everybody said, how did you do this? How did you figure this all out? And I really don't think that it was that way. I think it come to me and I accepted the learning and I've been led there. That's what I think.
Fantastic. So what are you excited about for the future?
Well, I'm really quite excited for one thing that it's on all these languages going everywhere and everybody's having it and utilizing it. And we're having some amazing outcomes. And, you know, hypnosis in general gets good outcomes. But for me, it's amazing that some of the swiftness of the change and the acceptance of the change. Because people don't like to change.
No.
We don't like it. It doesn't feel comfortable. This is the devil we know, we're going to stick it. So with hypnosis, we've always had to work and address that. But with SP, it seems to be very easily accepted. And a person can accept it in a blink of an eye, really. Just about that quick. Some people, it's just so quick, right? You see it happening. And other people are a little slower because whatever happened in their life and how it treated them or whatever, maybe it takes them a little bit. So it might take maybe a minute or something, you know. But in general, you can see the acceptance come on their face. Yeah. And from here, I really don't know where it's going. I really know I'm open to the change and I can feel it coming. I now know that there's, you know, we ask more questions and we've made different programs for people to use for physical health and for anything from very spiritual programs to very mundane as we would consider in the real world, which I think everything's the world or not the real world. I don't think there's really such a thing. So, but I'll do, you know, things for pain relief and all those things. And the usual, you can do stop smoking things and all that. But it's still led from the whole holistic part of you. It's still done on all those facets. And I think we're moving ahead because there's always new aspects that I add in. The questions change slightly and all that kind of thing. So there's a constant evolution. And I don't know, I can't really explain to you exactly what that is. Does the manual that I wrote back in 2005 still work? Yes. But this works much better as each and every time it increases. And people that are doing that, the more they do SP, if they do it the first time, they notice it. There's always going to be there's the 1% of people that they don't allow it to happen. Yeah. And that's the way it is in pretty much all hypnosis anyway.
It is.
You know, and it used to be 50% of the people, right? Because we weren't using our language in the right way for a lot of people before.
Yeah, people's tools have grown bigger.
Yeah, we've gotten better at it. We've done Jerry proud, and he helped a lot with that because he totally instigated change and was always open to change.
Now, speaking of that holistic approach, some of the listeners to this might become completely different fields to hypnosis of the modalities of what they work with or what they're interested in utilizing. And if they're practices of another health modality, have you found that somebody needs to have hypnosis knowledge to be able to learn SP?
I think you don't need to know everything. I like them to know a little bit, but it's usually you can pretty well teach it. I've had a few people that I didn't realize when they signed up that they aren't formal hypnotists, and they had other modalities in their back pocket, and they did extremely well.
Excellent.
Extremely well. Yeah.
Yes, well, I noticed from observing, I could see somebody walking in with zero knowledge and being able to grasp it and pick it up over the 4 days.
Yeah, I pretty well cover everything from the ground and up, and as long as they understand that process, and I teach them pretty well everything they really need to know.
Fantastic. And is there somewhere they can go to find out where there's a training somewhere in the world for them to
Where's
go
Martin? Oh my God, where's Martin? No, it'll be esdeleinstitute.com.
Fantastic.
And there's different aspects. From there, you should be able to find everything, including the free self-hypnosis site.
Fantastic. I'll put links in the show notes
Yeah.
as well anyway. And
We'll get those from
to
Martin.
make sure they're perfect.
Perfect.
Well, I won't ask you where you're going next because this will probably be out well after they're finished.
Yes, that's right.
So thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking with us. Is there anything you'd like to share with everybody before we finish up?
In life, I think you just need to move forward, and the biggest thing I can say to you is just be open to possibility for anything to change.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.